Welcome to Golden Blue, everybody, home of the college football fan. And don't forget about the checklist. Hat check, sunglasses check, Pepsi check, nose check, sources check, and thick skin is a check. Don't forget to send gear to represent your team and yourself in my background. Send it to P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina, 29657. Get yourself a shout out. On to the next video. This will be a Get It Gang video. What is the Get It Gang if you're not familiar with Golden Blue? The Get It Gang is the name that I came up with for the group of people that come up with video ideas and put them in the comment section of my videos. So if you think you have a good video idea, drop them in the comments and I just might use it. Today's Get It Gang video idea is from Brandon H. Here's what he has to say. Video idea. Rank the remaining group of 5 schools, G5, based on how likely it is they will be included in the next round of conference realignment for the Big 12, Pac-12, and ACC. By the way, I do agree with you, the SEC and the Big 10, zero chance of ever picking up another group of 5 teams. So yes, it comes down to the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the ACC. All right, let's go through the teams and see how much of a chance I think they have of landing in a Power 5 conference. First team I'm going to talk about is Tulane. I think Tulane could have like a 25% chance of landing in the Pac-12. They have AAU status. They have great academics. They just won the AAC. And oh yeah, a bonus. They just beat USC in the Cotton Bowl. They have a lot of check marks. I think the Pac-12 should check them out. And I do think they have a small chance of going to the Pac-12. 0% chance of landing in the Big 12. They wouldn't have the Big 12 at all. And about a 0.1% chance of landing in the ACC. And that's if the ACC gets picked apart and the ACC backfills. Tulane would be sort of on the bottom of the list, but they would be on the list. A lot of things would have to happen, but I had to give them a very, very, very small chance of going to the ACC because who knows? Maybe all that stuff will happen. The next team is SMU. I'd give them a 95% chance of landing in the Pac-12. We know that George Kliavkoff has already visited SMU. The Pac-12 is interested in SMU. We're expecting the Pac-12 to announce that they're inviting SMU to the Pac-12, and SMU will accept that invite. The only reason I don't have it at 100% is because nothing is guaranteed. But I'm giving it a 95%. 0% chance of landing in the Big 12. The Big 12 already has Texas Tech, Baylor, TCU, and Houston. SMU wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. And 0% chance of landing in the ACC. Not enough upside for the ACC to stretch out to the state of Texas to grab SMU. Next up is Memphis. This percentage might be higher than what you would agree on. But I'd give Memphis a 50% chance of landing either in the Big 12 or the ACC. Memphis is pouring $200 million into the Liberty Bowl for renovations. That stadium is going to look fantastic. I think in the future, the value of Memphis will go through the roof. And I know in the new TV deal of the Big 12, it doesn't guarantee any revenue bump if you add any more Group of 5 teams. But if Memphis raises their own value, then Fox might be willing to renegotiate the TV deal in order to add Memphis. That's not an end-all be-all. Fox could look at Memphis and be like, this might be worth renegotiating. Same for the ACC, except Memphis doesn't have very good academics. However, the ACC accepting Louisville kind of does away with that excuse. That would be a solid footprint in the state of Tennessee, especially if the ACC gets picked apart, which I expect they will. Memphis would be a great backfield addition, but 0% chance of them ever joining the Pac-12. They don't have good enough academics, and that would be too far of a stretch for the Pac-12 to grab a school that doesn't have the academic standards of the Pac-12. Next team is USF, South Florida. I give them a 10% chance of possibly going to the Big 12 or the ACC in the next conference realignment. It's not very high, but it is there. They are a Florida brand. For the Big 12, it would give UCF a traveling partner. And like I mentioned earlier, I know the clause in the TV contract states that by adding a Group of 5 team, there is no guarantee that they'll raise the revenue. But that doesn't mean that Fox might not think about renegotiating the TV deal if USF looks valuable. Same for the ACC, especially if they lose a Florida brand, which I expect they will lose at least one. USF is not a bad replacement. It's not going to replace everything, but it will soften the blow. And finally, 0% for the Pac-12, never going to happen. Rice, I'm going to say 20% for the Pac-12. The Pac-12 might get desperate enough to where they do need Rice because the Pac-12 might lose more members. So I think Rice would be on the menu, and I'd give them a small chance of going to the Pac-12 in the next conference realignment. 0% for the Big 12 and 0% for the ACC. Boise State, I'm going to say 10%. Not very high, but what did I just say a minute ago? Pac-12 might get desperate. They do look down on Boise State as far as their academics. But if they need the numbers, the Pac-12 could look at Boise State. I'd say 1% in the Big 12. Once again, that clause that doesn't guarantee any type of revenue bump if they add any more Group of 5 teams. But you never know, Fox might be willing to renegotiate for Boise State. Then, of course, 0% for the ACC. It just wouldn't make sense. Fresno State, I want to say 25% for the Pac-12. should be higher than that probably, but I don't know if they would accept Fresno State in the next conference realignment, and that's what this question was based on. Now, if you ask me on after the next conference realignment, the percentage would go through the roof. And of course, this would be for the Pac-12, softening the blow for losing UCLA and USC. 0% chance for the Big 12 and 0% chance for the ACC. San Diego State, I'm saying 95% for the Pac-12. Talks are very high right now between the Pac-12 and San Diego State. I do expect the Pac-12 to add San Diego State. I'm expecting an announcement on San Diego State at the same time as SMU, but I had to give it 95%, not 100%, because of what I mentioned earlier. Nothing is guaranteed. 0% for the Big 12 and 0% for the ACC. What about Appalachian State? I actually give them a 5% chance of getting to the ACC in the next conference realignment, and that just all depends on if the ACC gets picked apart. They would need some North Carolina brands to replace the North Carolina brands that they will be losing to the Big Ten and the SEC. But still, Appalachian State, not a great brand, so I gave them just a small percentage. 0% for the Pac-12 and 0% for the Big 12. What about East Carolina? I think it's a little bit higher than Appalachian State. I would give them 10%. I think their brand is a little bit better than Appalachian State. Their football stadium is much bigger. It holds around 50,000, maybe 55,000. So yes, I give them a 10% chance of getting into the ACC if the ACC does get picked apart, and they will need North Carolina teams to replace the North Carolina teams that they'll lose to the Big Ten and the SEC. 0% chance for the Pac-12 and 0% chance for the Big 12. What about honorable mentions? These are the teams that I don't think that will get picked up in the next conference realignment, but on down the road, maybe 5-10 years later, they could get picked up by a Power 5 conference. First up, James Madison. They are an up-and-coming brand. If the ACC stays intact, I do think that James Madison will have a chance to join the ACC in the future. Do not overlook James Madison. I know they just now made the jump to FBS football joining the Sun Belt, but their brand is growing through the roof. They have great facilities, one of the best in the Sun Belt. So yes, in the future, I do think that James Madison could be a member of the ACC. What about Louisiana? Well, here's my question or statement about Louisiana. Let's see how the football program looks in 3 years without Billy Napier and how the fan support looks. Louisiana's coming off a lot of success under Billy Napier, so let's see if they can sustain this success. If they can do that and the fan support is there, maybe the ACC or the Big 12 looks at them. What about UNLV? Well, first off, UNLV, they have a terrible brand, but they have great facilities. If the Pac-12 survives, they might have a chance because of location, because they're in Las Vegas. Remember, the Pac-12 already plays the Pac-12 championship in Las Vegas. Maybe it'll be a no-brainer to add UNLV in the future. What about Liberty? Well, Liberty has rich donors. And Hugh Freeze put Liberty football on the map. But can they keep it up? That's the question. If Liberty can keep it up and having the backing of the rich donors, who knows, in the future, 5 to 10 years, maybe the ACC comes a knocking, especially if they get picked apart by the SEC, Big 10, and Big 12. And finally, the last team, UConn. UConn has one of the best basketball brands in the entire nation, and they have potential in football. Remember what they did in the Big East. They had some success in the Big East. Now, since going independent, not so much. Finally got to a bowl last year, but got blasted by Marshall. The question is, would they be willing to leave the Big East in basketball? UConn loves the Big East. I'm not sure if they would be willing to leave the Big East in order to join an ACC or possibly the Big 12. But if the money's right, UConn could be a future Power 5 member in maybe the Big 12 or the ACC. So y'all know in the comment section, number 1, do you agree with my percentages as far as the group of 5 teams jumping up to either the ACC, Pac-12, or Big 12 in the next round of conference realignment? Did I forget any teams? Also, what about the honorable mentions? Do you think that those teams do have a chance in the future to ever be a member of a Power 5 conference? That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.